Now, what we will do? We will move on to uh, the application of again demand and supply to understand some important government policies. Okay? Application of demand and supply to understand the implications of government policies. This is coming from chapter 6 from your textbook, Principles of Economics by Mankiw. This is chapter 6. And elasticity and its application is basically chapter 5 of the same book, Principles of Economics by N. Gregory Mankiw. Right. So, first policy that we are going to discuss and understand is price ceiling. Price ceiling. Now, what is price ceiling? To understand, let us first draw the demand and supply once again. This is Q star, this is P star. Ceiling means, if you can think about a room, what is ceiling? Ceiling of a room is basically we can think of as an upper bound. Okay? We cannot go beyond the ceiling, we will get stuck with the ceiling. So, ceiling is basically an upper bound. The same concept is applicable here. Sometimes government feels that the market clearing price is too high for the ordinary people. Not many people would be able to buy the commodity at the existing market clearing price. So, government feels that the P star, which is actually market clearing, is too high. Not many people will be able to buy the product. Okay. So, government wants to then put a seal on the price and say that in a market no seller is allowed to sell the product a price which is higher than the sealed price. Now, the question is, should the ceiling be imposed at a price which is higher than P star or lower than P star? So, that means let us say this is P1 star. First, ceiling is imposed here. The question is this price ceiling binding? It is not a binding price ceiling, because the existing price P star itself is too high. Then what is the point in sealing the price which is higher than the market clearing price? So, that means when P1 star is greater than P star, that is not a binding price ceiling. So, this price ceiling is non-binding. This is a non-binding type of price ceiling. So, if the price ceiling has to be binding, then it has to be sealed at a level which is lower than the market clearing price. So, this is called binding. Okay. So, what we can write, P 1 star which is greater than P star is non-binding kind of price ceiling. We say that this is non-binding price ceiling, while P 2 star which is actually less than market clearing price is actually binding price ceiling. Now, what will happen to that? What will happen to that? So, that means in that ceiling price there is excess demand in the market, but sellers or suppliers are not supplying to that extent. So, a binding price ceiling leads to, what is the consequence? A binding price ceiling leads to excess demand in the market. Excess demand in the market. For example, let us say simple product ice cream we are talking about. Okay. So, when the price is P 2, there is excess demand in the market, but suppliers are not supplying that much. Okay. Supply is less, demand is more, that is why excess demand. So, what will happen? Many people are ready to buy, but supply is less. What will happen? So, you have to go and wait in a line if at all you want to buy an ice cream. So, that means to get one ice cream, maybe you have to be in queue for 2 hours, 3 hours. And who will be there in the line? Those who have lower opportunity cost of time. So, not many people are ready to be there in the queue for hours. Okay? So, that means even though government's objective is to help people by setting a binding price ceiling, that may not actually help people, right? That may not help people. People have to be there in the queue for hours, because there is a shortage in the market, excess demand. Or sometimes this is basically called price rationing, we can think of. Price ceiling is also called as price rationing. So, that means sometimes when there is an excess demand or shortage in the market, the good can be distributed among many individuals or families based on their requirement. And that exactly happens in a ration shop. You must be aware of ration shops, those particularly who are coming from rural areas. There are ration shops. What is basically ration shop? Ration shop means government imposes some ceiling for necessary items like sugar, like kerosene oil, like wheat, like dal, many of the essential items price is sealed which is lower than the market clearing price, because government feels not many poor people would be able to buy these necessary items at this market clearing price. So, P2 is the binding sealed price at which there is excess demand, shortage in the market. To meet the shortage, government says that just because you have money, you cannot buy as much as you can from the fair price or ration shops. Rather, government will give you a ration card. Depending on the number of the individuals, you will be allotted that much quantity, and those cards will belong to sometimes only the BPL category people who are poor, whose income is below the poverty line. That is how we can handle actually this shortage in the market. So, either two things will happen, either people will end up standing in the queue for long, which will result in loss in their income, okay, or you have to assign some kind of ration cards. So, that means you have to distribute the commodity among the people who are actually in need. This shortage of the product in the market may also lead to black marketing. When there is a shortage in the market for this type of products, the seller of this commodity can sell whatever unit they have, amount they have, at a much higher price. Okay. So, shortage will definitely, since what we know actually, look here, interesting thing, if the free market is allowed to operate, any type of shortage in the market will immediately lead to increase in the price. Since that is now stopped, price cannot move up due to ceiling. So, that will lead to a black marketing. So, that means if you have more money, then actually you can buy these products not by standing in the queue, but you have to get in touch with the seller in a different point of time when no one else is available around. So, that means even though government's objective was to help people, this price ceiling may end up giving a situation of black marketing, where people are forced to pay much more than even this market clearing price, that is called black marketing. So, this is an example how demand and supply, simple tools of demand and supply can actually help you understand the implications of price ceiling when the government is sealing the price at a level which is lower than the market clearing price. Now, let us come to the second example. This is called price flooring. Before we go to price flooring, we will discuss another example I forgot to mention here, price ceiling. Another example of price ceiling is rent control. Rent control. Let us say that a 2 BHK house cost you some 30,000 rent. That means the equilibrium this is, let us say, 30,000 for a 2 BHK apartment. all right. Now, government feels that this price is actually too much, not many people would be able to rent apartment at this price. Okay. So, that is why now government is coming into this apartment market for controlling the rent. What will happen? So, first of all, this demand and supply curve for apartment, this is apartment. The supply is not always an upward sloping supply for the apartments. Why this is so? Because in the short run at least, the supply of apartment is highly inelastic in nature. Even if the price changes, supplying apartment takes time. You can easily understand, no? Today suppose you have 10 units of this 2 BHK apartment, tomorrow rent goes from 30 to 35,000, will you be able to supply 5 more units in the market? No, because first of all you have to construct that house, and construction of housing, it requires some amount of time, it requires some months. So, supply cannot adjust immediately with the price, at least in the short run. That is why when you are talking about supply, this is price. So, in the short run, supply curve is almost vertical. This is vertical, that means this is short run. And this is, let us say, demand. Demand is downward sloping, and this is the equilibrium price P star, which we are talking about, this 30,000 rupees. And now government is imposing a binding rent control, binding price ceiling. So, can you think of whether the price ceiling should be higher or lower than this? As I told you earlier, a price which is higher than equilibrium price is called non-binding price ceiling. So, obviously, a binding price ceiling would be here, P1 star. Okay. What will happen in the market? At P1 star, you have demand, supply is fixed, that means you have this much shortage. Okay. So, a binding price ceiling, a binding rent control leads to shortage in the market. So, what the suppliers will do? Suppliers will rent the houses only those people who are known to them, or they may put many additional restrictions to them. They may say higher advance amount, they may say that I will not give it to maybe non-vegetarian people, I will not give it to bachelors people. So, that means lot of restriction may come in to tackle this shortage in the market. So, that means even though government's objective was to help people by controlling the rent in the housing market, ultimately this is leading to shortage, and that shortage will lead to many more additional clause coming from the suppliers. So, not many people will be able to find a house actually. So, the government's objective may not be fulfilled. This is the short run case, and in the long run what will happen? As I told you that short run supply curve is vertical, because government cannot adjust the supply immediately. Even if the price is P1 star, I cannot immediately reduce the supplying the units what I have already in the market. But in the long run, what will happen to the supply? Since price is now sealed, the house owners, they have very less incentive either to maintain the existing houses or build new apartments. Why should I maintain? Because the price is much lower now because of the government intervention, because of the rent control. As a result of which, the supply curve, which was vertical almost in the short run, will become a flat straight line, upward sloping line like this. And demand is this, right? This is demand, this is supply, this is equilibrium price, Q star, this is P star, and when you are putting a restriction here, look at the amount of shortage. Suppliers will supply only this much, demand is this much. So, this much is the shortage in the long run. Okay. So, in the long run, shortage of apartment will be much higher in the long run. Okay. So, very few apartments are there in the market and there is heavy demand for apartment. So, as a result of which, shortage which was already there in the short run, that would be much higher in the long run. Very few apartments are there in supply, very few people would be able to get an apartment when they need. So, that is why even though government's objective was to help people find an apartment at a lower price, ultimately not many people would be able to find it. So, this is the consequence of price ceiling that may happen. Okay. Now, we will talk about the opposite case, price flooring. Now, again you have to go back and think about the room. Ceiling was above, floor is below. So, flooring means it is just the opposite. That means price cannot go below a certain limit. Okay. In ceiling case, we said price cannot go above beyond a certain limit, you will stuck with the ceiling. Similarly, price cannot go below to a certain limit, you will get stuck with the floor. So, that means sometimes government feels that existing price is actually too low. If you want to buy a product, then you have to offer minimum this price. So, let us take an example. This is the all right. So, government feels existing P star is too low. What should the government do then? Government should impose a lower limit of the price. Now, should the lower limit be less than P star or higher than P star? Since it is price flooring, you may end up doing a mistake by setting a floor price which is lower than this. Obviously, if P star itself is very low, a lower value of P star, a floor price lower than P star is called non-binding price flooring. So, a floor price lower than P star is non-binding. So, obviously, government has to say that this is my seal price, sorry, floor price. So, a floor price higher than P star is binding. Now, what will happen here? So, there is more supply than demand. So, excess supply. Now, what is the example of this? Can you think of an example of this price flooring? Let us talk about minimum wage bill. Sometimes government say that if you want to hire a person, you must offer at least this price which is P1 star greater than the market clearing price or market clearing wage. We can think of this is W star, you can think of W1 star wage. So, this is labor market. What is the government objective here? Government's objective is to help these poor people so that they can earn some minimum amount when they are working for somebody. That is why government said that existing price or existing wage rate, market clearing wage rate is too low. If you want to hire a labor, this is the minimum price you must offer, which is W1 star, that is greater than W star. So, at W1 star, many people are ready to work. That means there is lot of supply, but employer are demanding only this much. So, what will happen? This excess supply will lead to excess supply will lead to unemployment for many workers. And this is a common phenomenon in labor market. Labor market is one of the market which does not clear. So, that means there will always be some kind of unmatched supply because of this price flooding or minimum wage bill, either imposed by the government or may be imposed by the labor union. Okay? They will say that you have to offer this much price, and at that much price employers are ready to employ only very limited amount. So, many people will lose their job. Who will get the job? Those people who are highly skilled, or those people who are very known to the employer, so on and so forth. So, that is why even though trade unions, labor unions or government's objective is to help people with more earning, more income, ultimately a price flooding may actually lead to unemployment for many. Earlier, at least they were earning something, P-star amount for supplying 1 unit of labor. But because of this price flooding, when the minimum wage bill is imposed, many people got unemployed. They will not get anything from the labor market. So, this is also a negative consequence of the government intervention. So, that means throughout these examples, what we understand by using simple demand and supply, that many of the government policies may not result in the desirable outcome. That is why policies should be carefully framed. We saw that in case of price ceiling, taken the example of rent control, what was happening, that not many people will be able to find a house because there would be huge demand and only very less supply, and that shortage of apartment will go and increase in the long run compared to the short run, because in the long run the supply becomes elastic in nature. By taking the example of ration shop, what we showed, that this minimum price, price ceiling for essential commodities may end up giving a situation of black marketing, or you have to be there in queue for long hours. Similarly, in the context of price and flooding and price ceiling, we saw the negative consequences of government policies. So, firstly we learned the applications of elasticity of demand. We showed that how elasticity of demand is actually helping us understand, analyzing many situations, how a good news can be bad news for the farmers, a bad news can be good news of the farmers. So, that means net impact on the revenue actually depends on elasticity of demand. Since elasticity of demand for many of the agricultural products are inelastic, when apparently a bad news may turn out to be good news. Okay? Apparently good news may turn out to be bad news because of this inelastic demand of agricultural products. And then another interesting case we understand about the drug market. If the government wants to reduce drug consumption by many of the drug consumers who are young people, so restricting the border areas is not a feasible solution, because that will lead to reduction in supply. When supply is reduced, price will go up. Since it is addicted product, many of the people are addicted to drugs, they may not be able to reduce the consumption accordingly. So, that will lead to higher consumption of higher expenditure for the drug consumers, and to finance that higher expenses they may end up committing many criminal activities. Drug related crime will go up. So, an alternative would be educating the youth, mostly the young people, about the side effect of drug consumption. When they are educated, then demand for drug will reduce, price will reduce, and total expenses for drug also will get reduced. So, this is what we have learned today: applications of demand and supply to understand government policies, and application of elasticity of demand in this context. Thank you.